today. That's what we're about, and review some of that stuff. And I know Amanda, we're going to turn it over to Amanda here shortly, and she'll get going on it. She's got a nice PowerPoint put together today to discuss the details of this bill. Just a little background information. This is something we've started on over 3 years ago. Seems like forever. I didn't realize when we started this process that it was going to take this long. I know that OFMA has, over the past several years, tried to make updates in regards to the Red Book. And as you know, the Red Book has two sections to it. There's a law section and then a rule section. The law section is governed by the legislature. The rule section, of course, by the Ohio Department of Agriculture, Director of Agriculture, and forming those rules and stuff. So we met about 3 years ago. We went down, met with Mike Vardarella, sat down with him and the legal team down in Columbus. Myself, Bev Fisher went with me from Canfield, Paul Lease from Columbiana County, and Amanda Sines from our lobbyist group. We sat down and we went through from front to back. And they thought it was just going to be a quick meeting. And I think we were there, about 4 or 5 hours that afternoon, Amanda. I think we tired them out by the time we got down to the end of it. So, we got through all that and we listed what we wanted to see in changes and stuff, and it kind of started the ball rolling. And we got to give Mike Vardarella a lot of credit too. Now he's no longer with ODA, but he helped us kick this ball down the field and get things started. We met subsequently with several members of ODA. Since then, I can't say that we've been successful on the ODA standpoint as far as getting rules changed. The rules we're still working on, and we're going to go back after them this year. The Long Range Planning Committee's made that commitment to go back and tackle the rules. But the legislative end of this was a huge win here. And Amanda can agree that, we throw a lot of things out there and we get some things in the end. And this is one of the things that we got that's big for fairs. Obviously, it's crucial because it comes at a time when everything is such a turmoil, after last year with COVID. And of course, this year with not knowing what's going on, at least we do have this. So I'm happy to say that the governor signed it last night. Or yesterday afternoon, he signed House Bill 665. I'm not sure he was 100% happy with it, but nonetheless, he signed it. So it's done and it's in the books. And so we're off on a fresh start. So with that, unless I forgot something, Amanda, I'm going to turn it over to you. We can try and get your PowerPoint up here and get going and review it. If you guys have questions, you are muted by the host. So if you have a question, give us a wave or something and we can go back and unmute you and you can come in. Or you can hit the chat box. We've got people monitoring the chat box as well. If you have a question along the way. Amanda is going to start off with Senate Bill 375 this morning, just a real quick synopsis of it. We don't want to spend a lot of time on it because our primary purpose is House Bill 665. But with that veto yesterday, I know there's a ton of questions about it. So she'll go ahead and hit that too. So Amanda, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks everybody for logging in this morning to learn about some of the work that OFMA has been doing at the legislature. As Paul said, yesterday, the governor did sign House Bill 665, but he also vetoed Senate Bill 375. And I just wanted to let you know a little bit about what that actually means. So Senate Bill 375, what that bill did is it rescinded the governor's order that said that it was junior fare only for your fares. And so the legislature, in there wanting to have full fares and to let you all begin your planning for 2021, passed Senate Bill 375 to rescind that junior fare order and create a broad working group to figure out what will happen in 2021. The governor was very, upfront throughout all of COVID and all of the other efforts to kind of rein in some of his authority on the health orders and shutting things down, that he did not support those efforts. So it really isn't a big surprise that bill was vetoed. I think it was still a very important exercise during the legislative process to give us that audience to publicly talk about some of the struggles that you had, the things that you were able to implement at your fairs to make them safe for people to attend and participate. And I really believe that the veto First of all, that veto does not mean that fairs are closed for 2021. What it means is that junior fair only order is still in effect through the state of emergency. I really do believe that we've got commitments from the legislature, from the administration, that we're going to be doing more work on the front end of 2021 to make sure that you have that guidance to move forward with your planning. It's still going to be very important that you're working with your local fair boards, or I'm sorry, with your local health boards and implementing those plans. And even if Senate Bill 375 would have been signed, that would have still been the case. So while it's very disappointing that the bill was vetoed, it was something that we supported. We supported that bill. We testified on that bill. It does not mean that fairs are closed for 2021. So I just want to give you those assurances that that work will continue with the governor's office and with the legislature. So with that being said, I'm going to get my PowerPoint up here. Can we see it? Okay.
Looks good.
Great. So we're going to walk through this presentation, walk you through the process and let you know some of the changes. I know Paul talked at the start of the program on what some of those processes were on the front end. And I know it can be frustrating because you all and your fair boards, you're people of action, and you want things to happen quickly, but the legislative process is called a process for a reason. And sometimes it takes a while. So, we were really happy to get this bill done in one general assembly is actually a huge accomplishment, even though it felt like it took a long time. So as Paul laid out, the OFMA had a long-term planning goal to revise the Red Book. And Paul and Bev Fisher and Paul Lease were the leads on the OFMA board to get that process going. We wanted to make sure that we were working in coordination with the Ohio Department of Agriculture, since they are kind of the umbrella regulators for the fairs. And we wanted to make sure that they had input and buy-in to a lot of the things that we were trying to do, because we were going to be more successful if we had the department on board with the changes that we were proposing. So we went through that changes, if you can see on my screen, we all had a copy of this book in front of us and went through it starting on page 1 and kind of put out, what are our wish lists? What do we want the Red Book to look like? What would make it easier and more modern for fairs to be able to understand all of the things that you are required to comply with by Ohio law? So we went through all of those desired changes, got a working draft in order, and then we started meeting with groups that might be interested in the bill. It's always better if you can to talk with your interested parties before introduction to get their feedback so we know what to expect through the process. So talking with groups like the Harness Horsemen Association, talking with the County Commissioners Association, different groups to get their input, and then we just started fine tuning what we wanted the bill to look like. And then we started meeting with the House and Senate members to identify sponsors and champions. The bill, House Bill 665, ended up being introduced by Representatives Jon Jones from Harrison County and Shane Wilkin from Clinton County. We had talked about possibly also having a bill in the Senate to have companion bills. But in talking with some of our champions in the Senate, they said, have the House pass it, send it over to us, and then we'll work on it. So that is the route that we went. The bill was first considered in the House Agriculture and Rural Development Committee. Paul came down and testified. Bev Fisher went through that process. The bill did get a lot of amendments over in the House that were all generally good and fine-tuning the bill. And then it ultimately passed the House of Representatives in June by a vote of 62 to 26. So then, with the legislative process, it has to go through both chambers before it gets to the governor. So we had to kind of restart that whole process over in the Senate. And then it was considered over in the Senate Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee, and ultimately passed the Ohio Senate a little under a month ago on December 22nd by a vote of 22 to 9. So just a couple of bragging posts here about your OFMA leaders looking very official at the State House, being your voice and talking to the legislators about your issues, the importance of the fairs, even throughout COVID. So, really appreciated them taking the time to come to Columbus. There's Paul and Bev. And then over in the Senate, we had Rod and Greta Gray, did a great job and managing the social distancing requirements and putting themselves on camera and doing all of those things. We really appreciate it because it really is important for the legislators to get in the weeds on the bill with the proponents, be able to ask questions, and really dig in. So we really appreciated all of that work and advocacy.
And remember, Amanda, we even made it through the part where they asked me what my opinion was too. So
yeah, I'm always like, you never know what's going to happen. But, very professional and, the OFMA board definitely showed fairs in a great light before the legislature and really did a great job. So getting into the nuts and bolts of what is actually in the bill, there's a lot of things in there. So I'm going to start and really get in some detail on some of the big things. And these are changes that, we have wanted for years. Through resolutions at the annual meetings of things for us to pursue, things we've talked about as a board for years. And really, this bill was our wish list of things that we really wanted to accomplish. So we were able to get 99% of what we wanted out of this bill. One of the biggest pieces is increasing ability for fairs to take on loans and incur needed debt. This is something that we've heard fairs have a lot of trouble with, particularly in recent history. So the current law had limited fairs to having no more debt than 25% of their annual revenue. And what House Bill 665 did was change it to your debt obligation payment now cannot be more than 25% of your annual revenue averaged over 3 years. So to put this into some real world context, the example that I used with legislators all year was, say you're a person that makes $100,000 a year. That's a really good living, right? So if you're making $100,000 a year, you're doing great. If a person was held to the same limitations that fairs were, you could never buy a house or buy a car because you could only incur debt of $25,000. So if you're making $100,000 a year, you can certainly afford a house that's worth more than $25,000. But it makes sense if you are making $100,000 a year under House Bill 665, you can only be spending $25,000 a year towards your debt. So you can be paying $25,000 towards your mortgage or towards your car payment. That is a more reasonable debt to income ratio for an individual. And it makes sense that a fair would have that same ability. So we heard about this, particularly, I know it was a big deal with Holmes County a couple of years ago when they were building their new fairgrounds. They were really limited on being able to borrow from banks because of this law. So we were really glad to see that changed. The House did add an amendment to where if your grounds are owned by the county commissioners, they have to sign off on that debt. There was some worry about fairs taking on too much debt, getting underwater, and then would the county commissioners be obligated to quote unquote bail you out should you get underwater in debt. So that was one of the things that was changed in the bill to put some checks and balances on there. So borrowing doesn't get out of control, but it's reasonable if you need it. If you want to build a building or do a big project, you have some more ability to borrow. Another big thing that had come up was dealing with beer sales. So under the current law, pre-House Bill 665, well, I guess currently, so county commissioners pay for the insurance on your building. There is a section of law that says, that is how it goes. That is not an expense that the fairs incur. That is paid by the county commissioners. They've got a pooled policy that covers lots of different buildings, and fairgrounds are a part of that. Well, there was another provision of law that said if you sell beer on your fairgrounds or doing your fair or other alcohol, that you must first use that income to pay for the insurance on the buildings. So, it was confusing to where if you do sell beer, then are you incurring actually new expenses and you are not actually benefiting from that beer income? And then does that put the county commissioners off the hook from paying the insurance on the buildings if you sell beer? We thought that those two sections of law were conflicting and confusing. So what we did is we just eliminated limitations or obligations on how you sell beer or how you use the income derived from beer sales. So now it's clear the county commissioners are, insuring your buildings, and you can use the income and profit from any beer sales, as you please. So we were really pleased to see that one. That was another big thing that we were really hoping to get done, and we did. So another big piece is, you get minimum investments from your county commissioners into the coffers for the fairs and to support junior fair activities and things like that. The bill doubled that minimum contribution from $800 to $1,600. And, $800 probably isn't the end all be all, but that minimum contribution had not been increased since at least the 1950s. So at first, when people saw it, they're like, well, doubling, that seems kind of excessive. But when you looked at actually what that number was based on inflation, that $800 should actually be more like $7,200 or $5,600. I can't remember the exact number. So we thought doubling was reasonable. We also removed caps on what the county commissioners reimburse fairs for junior fair activities. We didn't understand why there was a cap on that investment in the law. And if your county commissioners want to give you more money, they should be able to. So we increased the minimum and removed any maximum. So some of the changes that we worked on with the Harness Horsemen Association. So as you know, all of your dates.
Let's back up. Let's back up just a minute. We had a chat question come through.
Okay.
Is this money from the commissioners the same amount for independent fairs?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and I believe, I'll have to double check it, but I believe if you are in more than one county, they divide it equally among the county commissioners. But yes, the numbers. So really, the law doesn't treat independent and county fairs differently. So even though you have little different sections and you're organized a little different, the law doesn't treat you different than a county ag society.
And I think it's important to know what Amanda alluded to. I mean, this isn't, we're well aware of the fact that 800 to 1,600 isn't like a saving grace, of money and stuff. It's just that, we were in the process of trying to update this red book, and this is just one of those things that needed updated. But this is also, wound up being a give and take at the end, where we ran into a little resistance from the commissioners and other issues. This was a little bit of give on the other side. So that's where some of that stuff.
That's right. Okay, cool to move on, Paul? Okay. So working with the Harness Horsemen Association, as you know, you submit your fair dates and your racing dates well in advance. There was a current provision in the law to allow for alternative accommodations for unfavorable weather, but it all needed approval from the department. And everything with COVID and all of the uncertainty made it clear that there needed to be a little bit more flexibility in those areas so that, if you're a racing fair, that revenue is very important to you. And so it's very important to be able to have flexibility in the accommodations to get those races held so that you can get your harness racing money. So working with the, like I said, the Harness Horsemen Association, they put together some language that we were able to support. So, you know, you can combine the races, you can race in a different county if you need to, you know, for emergency purposes. So again, we thought that was really important. And it also allowed us to garner the support of the Harness Horsemen Association during the committee process, because it's always great to have more support for your bill than just you. So we appreciated them talking to legislators as well, doing testimony. It was really great to have that partnership with them on this. So some of the other things that the bill does, you know, sometimes when we were going through our process of proposing changes, there were some sections that it was like, I didn't know what they meant. They were written in language that was so archaic and so outdated that they really just needed rewritten so that it was easier to understand, easier for the fair boards to follow. So a lot of the changes are just reformatting how the laws are written. It also renumbered all of the amusement ride sections of the law. So currently all fairs are regulated mostly under 1711, and the amusement ride safety section was 1711 as well. So what the bill did is created a new section for the amusement rides. So now 1711 is just fairs. And then the new section, they have a new section for the amusement ride section. So again, it didn't change anything really in the law. It's really just a technical change. So again, just rewriting several sections. It removes, oh, this was another big one that I know we've heard complaints about in the past. It removes the requirement that fairs publish their financial report in a newspaper of general circulation. Instead, fairs will post the announcement of the filing in the newspaper or on their website for not less than 2 weeks. Again, that's a very modern change. It's a cost that really didn't benefit the public, because if people want to find your financials, they're probably going to look to your website anyways, not in the newspaper. So again, that'll be a small cost saver for the fair boards. If you have a website, you can now post those online instead of paying for the newspaper of general circulation publishing. It also removes the current law required that the county superintendent and an OSU extension employee be ex officio members of your fair board. And so we changed, we weren't really sure why a county superintendent had to be on every county fair board, and I didn't even know what a county superintendent was. So we eliminated that requirement and then specified that the OSU extension employee is a non-voting member. So even though ex officio, you know, it really does mean non-voting, we thought it made more sense to be very specific that yes, you have an OSU extension employee, but unless they're really a fair board member, they're a non-voting member. They can give input, they come to meetings, but just clarifying that. It also requires the society's treasurer or person under the supervision of the treasurer collects, accounts for, and records the deposit and disperses all of the funds of the society, just really just defining more the roles of the treasurer. But again, they can have somebody under their wing doing some of those things as well. And this one, it specifically permits societies to sell seasonal tickets and passes during the fair, and permits you to sell tickets to fundraisers benefiting the society during the fair. Now, a lot of you are probably doing this anyways, so it's just something in the law to make sure crystal clear that you're allowed to do it. And then it also amends to clarify and tightening tax exemptions for property owned by county ag societies. As we know, you're all 501c3s and tax exempt, but making sure it was really clear that any property owned by the society is also tax exempt. So now that the bill is passed and signed,
And
which
Amanda,
we
we got a question. We just had a chat come in. What about membership tickets? That's a question.
I would say that's a yes.
Yeah, that's a yes. Membership tickets wouldn't have any difference. This was a two different sections. This was a section, the rule section clarifies how membership tickets are handled. That stuff has not changed. These are tickets for fundraisers and things and events and stuff that you do. It's permitting you the permission to sell those tickets. So hope that answers everything. I think Howard Call has a suggestion here. So Howard, did you have something you want to bring in?
Yes, I would suggest that each fair board create a policy on how you're going to handle this item of ticket selling outside the office, so that it's crystal clear to the board members their responsibility. And I also think that at some point it might be a constitutional item to go through the membership to place into the Constitution. We've had concerns over the years with books of tickets disappearing from the office and coming back and not knowing whether those people are members, they live in the county. And I just think it's a good thought to have a policy wrapped around this, so that as these ticket books leave the office, what the understanding, the responsibility of the seller is. Thank you, Paul.
I think that's a great suggestion. And this is permissive language that if you don't want to allow the sale, you don't have to. So make it work, whatever works for your county fair. The language is just allowing you that additional opportunity specifically to sell. But that doesn't mean that you have to allow it for your
right.
fair.
And the membership ticket rules still apply. Nothing got changed in the 1711 section about the requirements of being that those ticket holders must be a county resident. None of that changed.
Correct. And as well, we, as we mentioned before too, is we'll go back and look at these rules. We're going to go back in and look at rules now that we've got the law section changed. We can go back and look at the rules, and there's membership requirements in the rules that we can evaluate too and help out with that. But policies are always an outstanding suggestion. Thanks, Howard.
Okay. So, that kind of does lead us into what our next steps are now that we have this bill signed into law. So legislation goes into effect 90 days after it's signed. So it will be in effect by your, next fair, your 2021 fair. And the red book's going to need to be reproduced because there are a lot of changes. It's going to look quite different. And we're also going to need to work with the Ohio Department of Agriculture on rule revisions to then bring the rules in line with the new law. As Paul indicated, there are, two processes for your regulations. You've got the laws that are passed by the legislature and the rules that are implemented by the Department of Agriculture. But the Department of Agriculture is limited to how much they can do in the rules because they have to be consistent with the law. So, going back to that example about the change with the printing financials in the newspaper, that was in the rules as well. And we've said, well, can we just make it more flexible in the past? And the Department of Agriculture has had to tell us no, because they have to be consistent with the law. And since that requirement is in the law, the department can't waive it.
And that's a perfect example, Amanda, too, on that issue right there, because our annual report, as you know, every year says we have to attach a notarized abstract of the financial that was printed in the paper to go with the annual report. So obviously that won't have to be done. Now the rule's going to have to change to accommodate the change on the other side of it. So it's perfect where we're at. So
we're going to, basically be going through this entire process again, just now with the rules and having the new laws in front of us and just marking up the rules about what can change and what could be updated to now reflect the law. So, again, then you're going to have to get new books with the new dates. But again, that will go into effect 90 days after yesterday. So any more questions coming in?
Kathy,
Frankly,
can we, Kathy and Leanne, can we just unmute everybody and then ask everybody to go ahead and mute themselves, and then they can go ahead and unmute when they have a question to talk? I know Frank Payden's got a question here. Is that possible for you guys to?
Can you hear me?
yes.
All right. I mean, my question goes back to the sale of tickets, or where you guys were talking membership tickets. Does that include that section? Does that include if we were to decide to have a raffle to give away a car with the proceeds benefiting the fair? Is that permitted now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. How about a vendor or a concessionaire that would run a contest at his booth?
No.
The change in the law specifically says that they can be sold, they are specifically permitted to be sold for the benefit of the society.
Great. Okay. Thanks for clearing that up.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
And I'm also going to put in, I know Howard is going to be sending this around to all of the district directors, but I'm going to put a link in here to the full bills summary, because there's other things in there that we really didn't get in the weeds about. So if there's, other things that you want. And so this is called the LSC Summary of the bill. And LSC is the Legislative Service Commission, and they do all of the official drafting for the legislature. And so even though this says this is the version as passed by the Senate committee, that is the most current version. So there weren't any changes to the bill after the Senate committee passed it. So that is in the chat if you wanted to look through that more closely.
One of the questions just came in. Amanda says, does this change the requirements to publish meeting dates? Can they just be posted on the website like financials? And I do not believe that that's in there. I believe that's a rule change probably that comes in. But
So publishing your meeting dates, like your Fair Board meeting dates, you don't have to post those in the newspaper anyways. As long as you're complying, that would be under the open meetings law. Right. And you just have to have a policy. How do we let the public know we are meeting? And then you have to follow that policy. So if it's send out an email, or if you, put a notice on the door of the Fair Board, whatever that process is for you to alert the public to when you are having a public meeting, that is what you must follow. That does not necessarily have to be in the paper. If the media requests those meeting dates and you send them to them, then they can publish them. But I don't think you're required to pay for those notices to be in the paper.
Next question is, what about election notices? And that is still in the rule section. The election notice is what you have to do to comply by the rule section. And yes, they're still in effect of where the rules are currently. So, and I don't see a lot of change on that stuff coming. So on elections, so to speak. So. What else we got, guys? Just a few house cleaning things here on this. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of this, obviously we're doing these Tuesday sessions. This is our first, Tuesday after the first of the year getting started on this, but they are sponsored. We have to thank our sponsors that come and help us out throughout the year. And Fair Publishing sponsored today's event. So they jumped on board. Of course, I know several of you use them for tickets and stuff like that. And if you don't, go ahead and look them up. They've been a great supporter and a sponsor of OFMA through the years. The other thing is that this meeting was recorded this morning. So all the stuff that we've covered in Amanda's PowerPoint, and that's been recorded, and it'll be put on our YouTube channel on the Fair Manager's website. Go to the Fair Manager's website and get to YouTube. Also, if you have a time and you haven't done it already, talk about it this weekend, get signed up for our YouTube channel, because the more people we have on the YouTube channel, the more flexibility we have and what we use it for, and the rules that we can, what we can do with it are out there. So if we can unmute Bev Fisher, I think she's got a few things to say. Bev, are you unmuted?
Hey, Kathy, let me in now.
There you
There we go. I just want to thank Amanda, Paul, the OFMA board. They put a lot of time into doing this to try to get this passed through. Yeah, we went to Columbus and talked, but it took a lot of hours, especially on Amanda's part, to negotiate and be there for us. When we went down to testify, she was right there with us to make sure we were comfortable and not freaking out. So from a fair board perspective, I think you guys should, thank Amanda and Paul. They put a lot of time into doing this. And I, for one, appreciate everything you guys have done.
Well, it was a pleasure. I was glad for a good resolution on this because we did work really hard.
I would agree, Bev. We've gotten the credit, and it's nice that she puts our pictures up there. Obviously you can dress us up, but you can't take us to town very often, and get us on stage down there. Like I said, we even survived when they asked us what my opinion was at the end of it. So I know Amanda gasped. I could hear her in the next room. She gasped when they asked that question, but we got through it nonetheless. But it's a group effort. The OFMA board is behind this, and it's easy to do because we love working for you guys, and we are who you are. At the end. So that's where it gets. I know when you condense this and you put it in a presentation, it doesn't seem like we did a whole heck of a lot, but we did it. Like you said, it was just on and on and on, and it just was amazing. And Amanda said it at the beginning. There's a reason politicians are politicians. I am not a politician. And that was very clear as we went through this. And Amanda talked us off the ledge on several occasions because we wanted an answer today, and you just don't get answers today. Amanda, we did have one question come through here. It asked if we could repeat
Jon up there
about the property tax. So
is he on this meeting?
So
Is he on his phone, like on a?
everybody needs to mute, guys. We unmuted you, but you need to mute. There you go. Thanks.
That was really just a small change in the bill because we heard an issue where a county had been donated or somebody left in their will a building or a piece of land for the fair, and that was the county tried to tax that property because it wasn't necessarily directly on the fairgrounds, I believe was the issue. So we clarified within the law that property owned by a county ag society that is used in the furtherance of the purpose of the society is exempt from tax. So just making it really crystal clear that any property buildings owned by the fairs used for the furtherance of the society is tax exempt. So it's not creating necessarily a new tax exemption, just making sure that the current one is really tight.
If any of you have followed this throughout the year, there was a pretty big section in here about some other tax stuff on fairs and fair property and stuff and societies. And some of that just fizzled out here at the end. And, we had to drop it to run to get the rest of the bill through, which was the important part at this point, was getting the stuff, that debt limit and those beer sales and those things. They might be small, but they're big at the end. So it was important to get as much as we could through, and we'll go back after that taxation part too, that we had to take out.
Particularly because we were bumping up the end of the General Assembly. So if 665 hadn't passed the legislature by December 31st, we would have had to start this process all over again. So sometimes you take what you can get, and we got, like I said, 95% of what was in the bill that we introduced of our wish list. So, that's a pretty good batting average for the legislature.
Right. I see, are there any more questions coming up? I see the president of Fair Managers is on here right now, Mr. Arter. I don't know if he's got anything he wants to add today, so I don't know if he wants to unmute and say anything. We have any more questions about 665 though? There you go, Rod. You want to unmute? Kathy, can we unmute Rod? Leanne? Get Rod Arter unmuted and
There you go. I'm sorry, Paul. I took myself off because I had a phone call. What was what did you?
Did you have anything you wanted to add today? I saw you were on the call. I didn't know.
No, I want to thank you and your committee for doing what you did. And I'm just tickled pink because I look in the chat box and see all these people that I believe appreciate what we're doing. And I think that makes it much easier for us to keep working for them as we go forward. But other than that, great session. Thank you, Amanda. Thanks, Paul.
Yep. Amanda, you want a question just came in. What's the next step on 375? So I think it's dead as far as I know, right?
That's right. So since the governor has vetoed Senate Bill 375 and Senate Bill 375 was passed, even though it was only, a couple of weeks ago, it was an entirely different General Assembly. So as I said about 665, any bill, you have to pass it within a 2-year session of the General Assembly. That General Assembly ended December 31st. So since the governor vetoed the bill after that General Assembly adjourned, the new General Assembly can't override that veto. So what the legislature could do is they could reintroduce it and start the process over again. But I believe that there is a general commitment to start work very, very soon to put together a plan for the 2021 fair season. So I can't say for sure if that will be in the form of new legislation or if it will just be working in a more coordinated fashion. It's not going to be like 2020. Nobody knew what the heck we were doing. Nobody's been through a global pandemic before. And while the frustration is very understandable of what you all had to deal with last year, I don't expect that to happen again this year. So, as
Amanda?
I said at the top, yes.
I've been communicating with legislators this morning via messenger, and I just talked to Jon Jones, and here's his statement. Senator Hoagland and I, Don Jones, are going to work with the governor's office to get the work group set up, which is the 25 people working group set up and organized to start the conversations with what we need to do to get information gathered and out so fairs can start their planning. I'm optimistic, he underlines it, that we are going to be able to have full fairs this year. So that's from Representative Jones, and he has a leadership role now in the House.
Yeah, I think it says a lot, the fact that the legislature passed Senate Bill 375 in such short order. Like I said, it's not surprising that the governor vetoed it, but that does not mean that your fairs are closed. And there is a general commitment, as Howard just said very well, to get you guys some guidance sooner rather than later.
Anything else this morning? Good of the order. I know Howard's got one more thing we want to talk about, health departments, but it would focus on 665 here. Is there anything else about 665 or that we can answer any questions on? So if not, we appreciate all the support. Hopefully this took care of a lot of resolutions like Amanda said we've had over the years. It'll be a process still, we'll have to get red books reprinted and going. We're going to have to tackle the Department of Agriculture right away and get after the rule changes again. We thought we had all that stuff started, but we'll have to start from scratch again and go down there. Of course, the director just loves me, as you can imagine. So I'm sure she'll be excited to see us come back to Columbus. Mr. Arter, maybe we can go down in the morning again one time. I know our 15-minute meetings, she likes those quite a bit too. So that being said, I think Howard had a quick update on health departments. I think you guys have been getting contacted by some health departments and stuff. Howard, did you have something?
Yeah. Yes, thanks, Paul. As you may know or not know, last week during the governor's press conference that he has on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2:00, he mentioned the lag in vaccinations in Ohio. The pace is not what he anticipated, and mentioned county fairgrounds. Well, that must have woke up some health departments, because in the last 48 hours, I'm starting to get emails from county fairs asking what the deal is. And the deal is you'll have to negotiate with your county health department, whatever the deal is, whether they're building buildings, and at Lake County, they're building a large three-bay garage facility with drive-through services. And at Columbiana County, they're building a hoop building with drive-through services. And the county health departments through the CARES program is paying for that. But you're going to end up negotiating your own deal for utilities and whatever else. And there is money to implement the vaccination program. And So again, and as I've already advised, the 4 I've gotten last 48 hours, you need to cut your own deal. If you need us to help, we can help, but I don't want to get in the way. Because when I get my feet in the way, usually it spells trouble for someone. But again, cut your own deal, and go forward, but contact us if you have an issue.
Thanks, Howard. I know, this is an example in Jaga here, we had a very, I'll say not positive relationship with the health department until the very end. And then we managed to cultivate a pretty good relationship. We actually let them use the fairgrounds at no charge for a drive-through flu vaccination program, just to get a setup on how it would look for a drive-through COVID vaccination. And then in April, he's using school facilities and that around the county right now, but as soon as we get the good weather, we've booked the fairgrounds from April through November for a drive-through, one day a week drive-through COVID vaccination program with the health department. So, and if you can work with these guys, at the end of the day, we're going to have to work with them whether we like them or not. So, is there anything else for the good of the order this morning? Again, we want to thank Fair Publishing for being our sponsor today. We appreciate everybody joining us. Thanks for all the support this weekend too with the annual meeting. I know there's some technical difficulties, but we appreciate everybody hanging on there. And we got through the raffle the night before, generated some funds for fair managers. I know the auction went off last night. All the auction items were sold online through Breeders' World. Breeders' World did a great job helping us out as well. It's been a group effort. I know we're trying to figure out where we're heading, but I think these Tuesday meetings will keep us in the loop, together. So we'll be able to stay maybe a little closer as we get through the spring to see where we're heading for 2021 too. And I know Amanda will have updates along the way, and she'll probably jump in on some of those meetings, even that's not the topic, but jump in and we can get an update as well. So I think we had at one time over 70 people on the line here this morning. So just can't thank you guys enough for joining us to go through this. So if there's no more questions, we're going to go ahead and end the session and wrap things up. Like I said, it's recorded, it's in YouTube. So get in there, sign up on our YouTube channel so you can pick it up there. So.
How you doing?
Great.
Anything
Thanks,
else?
everyone.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you, Kathy and Leanne, for taking the time this morning to monitor